Hey guys, how's it going? I wanted to make a video about my Archmage Bladefall Blade Blast Trickster that I've been playing for the last couple of weeks. This was my second character of the league, so I wanted a build that I could put some currency into and make a fast mapping character. So it's definitely not a budget build, but it's not crazy expensive either. I think I've spent around 15 to 20x or something like that. I ended up going for BFBB because I wanted to be fast for mapping and ultimatums, but still be able to do like conquerors and Sirus, but not really focused on endgame bossing. I saw a lot of people playing this as Raider and some Necromancers, but I thought Trickster looked like a really underrated Ascendancy for Archmage, so yeah, I decided to try it out. And the biggest reason for going Trickster are these Ascendancy nodes, Patient Reaper and Weave the Arcane. Basically, the big advantage for Trickster over something like Raider would be we have so much ways to recover mana through our Ascendancy, while Raider probably has more, maybe some more defensive options. They get free onslaught, free aiming immunity, and some things like that, but they don't really have any way to recover mana. So I decided to try Trickster because yeah, these are really sick for regaining mana and HP. Patient Reaper, 3% mana on kill, and 70% increased recovery rate of life, mana, and energy shield if you killed an enemy recently affected by your damage over time. So the way we're proccing this is by using a jewel that has chance to poison on hit. You could also get it through igniting, I guess, but I think poison is by far the easiest way to do it. So yeah, that's a bit of a unique interaction, I guess. The 3% of life on kill doesn't really matter because so much of our recovery is from the Agnostic, which this also applies to with the recovery rate of life and mana. So yeah, this is what makes us able to get so much recovery for mana and life, and also with the Arcane, which has 30% chance to recover 10% of mana when you use a skill. So that's, if you go to low mana and you see it jumps up like that sometimes, that's the 30% every time you use a skill to get 10% of mana. So that's really nice. It also has 20% increased cast speed if you use a movement skill recently, so pretty much all the time, which is really nice for this build, because in order to make Bladefall Blade Blast feel smooth, you need a lot of cast speed, because you're using 2 spells in order to get your damage out. So yeah, that's really nice for a smooth mapping experience. And it also just has 30% increased maximum mana, which is what this build is based around, just having a bunch of mana. That's where you're getting your damage and your survivability from. So it's a really nice node. And then the last 2 nodes, Harness the Void and Swift Killer. Swift Killer gives us some damage, but it's a free way to get Frenzy Charges and Power Charges. Power Charges we're not really using because we are Elemental Overload. But one more Frenzy Charge and getting them for free and 40% increased damage is really nice. And then Harness the Void, yeah, just a bunch of flat chaos damage basically. And the tree looks a little bit different from the Raiders, I guess. We're not pathing down for Wind Dancer, pathing through here because we're starting here. And some of these nodes are really nice as well, so I decided you could path through here as well, but yeah, I decided to go here because these nodes are really strong. Elemental Focus, Cold-Hearted Calculation, Lethal Assault, yeah, these are pretty decent. So, but overall for the tree, you're just picking up pretty much every mana node that you can reach. Some HP nodes that are efficient, like these, and these are nice for some mana reg and HP. But yeah, you're just picking up as much mana as you can. You could probably use a cluster setup as well, but I decided not to. These are really important. Dynamo with these this wheel is really nice for getting mana back when you use Arcane Cloak. It sacrifices a bunch of your mana, 64%, but gets it all back pretty much thanks to this. Recover 20% of mana over 1 second when you use a guard skill. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the... Well, we're using Supreme Ego for our Wrath that we have in an Essence Worm, so it doesn't reserve any mana. It gives us a bunch of damage. Yeah. And of course, yeah, the Agnostic, just to explain it a little bit, it removes your energy shield. And while not on full life, sacrifice 20% of mana per second to recover that much life. So this just gives us an insane amount of regen, especially paired with Patient Reaper. You can just, if you take a hit and you're just gonna see your life shoot straight up. It's really crazy regen, and the only thing that's gonna kill you is one big hit. But we do have 40% Mind Over Matter from Cloak of Defiance. Mind Over Matter being damage taken from mana before life. We get this node for free through Cloak of Defiance, and then 10% extra. So 40%. So you can imagine the health pool as being like 40% bigger. And we also have a lot of dodge, attack dodge and spell dodge. 70% for attacks and 60% for spells, while the Quartz Flask is up. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the tree. We got some jewels, Unnatural Instinct. It's pretty expensive, but it's really good. But you don't really need it if you're poor. I mean, if you're trying to make a budget version, this is something that I would cut. Then you're using one Clear Mind. This is limited to one. It's really good. 40 to 60 increased spell damage, while no mana is reserved, which we don't reserve any mana, thanks to Essence Worm. And then some mana regeneration, and again this jewel to keep up Patient Reaper with chance to poison and hit. Like you're keeping it up really easily during mapping. Even though 3% might not look like a lot, you're hitting really fast with Blade Blast and Bladefall. It's very easy to sustain. And that's the same reason we really need a Corrupted Blood Jewel, because it stacks up to 20 like instantly when you attack a pack with Bladefall. And then you're also just trying to get some mana on it. This was pretty cheap for me, maybe 10C or something. Not a lot. Right, so let's take a little bit of a look at the gear. We're using Asenath's Gentle Touch for explosions. This is really nice. It also gives temp chains and blinding corpses, blinding enemies near corpses affected by your curses. So yeah, it gives a little bit of a blind and a temp chains to slow them down. But the most important thing is the explosion, which is really insane for clear speed. And then it also just has some nice life and mana. You want to get as much mana on your gear as well as your tree, of course. Then we're using Omeyokans. This is part of the reason we want to be Trickster, because you're losing 7% mana per second, but that doesn't really matter when we have so much mana regeneration from our Ascendancy. It's really easy to stay at full mana, pretty much. You're never going on low mana, which is... well, I shouldn't say never, but pretty much when you're mapping, you're effectively never losing Onslaught from this, because you have Onslaught when not on low mana. Low mana is 50%, so every now and then you will dip below it, but you're gonna have pretty much permanent Onslaught. And then also 20% attack dodge and spell dodge is really nice. As long as you have, whatever, 5,000 mana, I guess, which we easily have. Then it's just has some nice maximum mana and some resist and movement speed. I got this enchant from the lab myself. I'm not sure what it would cost, but the boots themselves are pretty cheap, like 50C I think. The gloves are probably like 4x. And then we're using an Essence Worm. Again, this is just to not have to reserve any mana for our Wrath. That Sirus Foible is just a really nice boost to our mana and mana regeneration. And also the attribute thing is pretty nice. We would have to get some more dex and strength without it. So yeah, that's pretty good. And then, yeah, Cloak of Defiance, this gives 40% mind over matter, basically. And just a bunch of mana and mana regeneration. And some evasion, which is really good. And then, yeah, Crown of the Inward Eye. Transfiguration of body and mind is really good. Gives a bunch of damage. And then this you can get up to 21% maximum life and mana, which, again, really big. Bladefall has an additional volley. I'm not sure this is the best enchant. You can get pretty much any Bladefall or Blade Blast or maybe Arcane Cloak enchant would be pretty good as well. And then I'm also using Cephal's Frame. You could be using 2 wands if you want to do more damage, but I felt like the damage was enough already. So I went with this one for gives a little bit of spell block and spell damage and maximum life with the corruption. But 4% to maximum, all maximum resists. That's really nice, actually. For being able to tank things like Sirus, any elemental damage. But also because we are using Righteous Fire. So you can see the mana is slowly ticking down with this, but if we take it off, it goes a lot faster. Because this gives 4% max fire res, which this is fire damage, so it makes it a lot easier to sustain our mana and life while having Righteous Fire up. And Righteous Fire is a really nice addition. It's 39% more spell damage, so 39% more damage, which is pretty insane. And you definitely want to be able to keep that up, and we can pretty easily as a trickster. Omeyocan and Righteous Fire is not really a problem, while maintaining mind over matter. Yeah. And then for the other ring slot and the belt slot, we're just trying to get as much resists as possible, pretty much, because we have so many uniques that don't really have a lot of resist. This is also nice for helping out with the resist a little bit, actually. And just to try to get some life and mana on them as well. And then for the wand, there's not a lot of good stats for the wand. Like plus to gem levels doesn't really matter. And of course crit doesn't really matter either, because yeah, we do take elemental overload. Yeah, so you just want to get a bunch of mana, spell damage, lightning damage, cast speed. You could also get lightning damage as extra physical as well. But yeah, this was pretty cheap. I just bought the fractured mod and then clicked some spell damage essences. It's not an amazing wand by any means, but yeah, it does the job. And should be pretty easy to craft. For the flasks, it's Sirus Promise, Chemist's Jade Flask. Well, yeah, Chemist doesn't really matter. As long as you're getting freeze somewhere on your flasks, and freeze immunity and curse immunity is what you're looking for. And as long as you have Corrupted Blood Jewel, you don't really need bleeding immunity on your flasks. And you want to get an Alchemist Quicksilver so you can go extra fast. For some boss fights, I'm using this Foreboding Eternal Mana Flask. Yeah, since a lot of our regen is based on killing enemies, sometimes during bosses it can get a little bit dicey, so you want to have an extra mana flask, and this brings you to full mana pretty much at the end of the duration of it. So for doing Sirus and like Uber Elder, I would use this instead of the Jade Flask probably. And the other mana flask is an enduring mana flask, so it doesn't end every time we go up to full mana, which pretty much every time you kill a pack, you just go straight up to full mana. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the gear. Alright, so let's take a little bit of a look at the gems. Using Blade Blast with Control Destruction, Archmage, Lightning Pen, Elemental Focus, and Intensify. Now, Intensify gives you area when you don't have any stacks, and then more damage when you do have stacks. So every time you're using the spell and standing still, you get stacks of intensity up to 3. And at that point you're doing a lot more damage, but you have a smaller area. And when you move, you lose these stacks and you get more more area of effect. And so yeah, that's nice for mapping. When you're running around, you get more area, and then when you reach the boss, you get some stacks and you do more damage. Same as when you're doing like bosses, you want to stand still as much as you can. Of course, you gotta move out from like mechanics to not die sometimes, but you want to stand still to keep the intensity up. And the rest of the gems are pretty much just straight up damage. You can get awakened gems for control destruction and elemental focus as well. I have it just on the lighting pan. And Archmage, yeah, this is what the whole build is built around. You just want to get as high of a mana cost and as much mana as possible, and it gives you a lot of lightning damage. And yeah, of course, Blade Blast on its own is just one small explosion, like, but when you're using Bladefall, you get a bunch of explosions. So it's kind of a combo build, I guess. You're using Bladefall with Spell Cascade. You want to keep this at level, I think you can have it at level 1 or 2. Just don't level it up so it gets more area. And you want to keep the area as small as possible on Spell Cascade. So that's where you're not using any quality on it as well. You want to keep the area small so that the blades stack closer together, so that gives you more overlap on like rares and bosses. You could make the case that for mapping, having a little bit area is better, but I don't actually think so. For map bosses and things like that, you want to be able to get a little bit more damage. So getting the blades stacked close together is very important. So yeah, spell Cascade, Bladefall, Unleash, so that you're getting stacks of Unleash and then throwing out 3 Bladefalls at once is good, and then just faster casting to make it a little smoother. And then we have Smoke Mine, Second Wind, Flame Dash as our way of moving around. Just use Smoke Mine once every now and then to get the movement speed boost, and then Flame Dash for the rest of it, for moving out of like mechanics and things like that. Then you get Sigil of Power with Intensity, Intensify, and increase the area of effect, just to make it bigger. And the way this works is that when you're spending mana in it, it gains stages, and the more stages it has, the more damage you deal when you're inside it. So that's why you just want a bunch of area, so you can move around more in it. And yeah, put this down for bosses or like map bosses. Or in Ultimatums is pretty good as well, to just slap it down in the middle. And then you got Arcane Cloak with Second Wind, Increased Duration, and Arcane Surge. This gives us a huge damage boost every time it's up. You want to keep as much uptime on it, that's why you got the Increased Duration and Reduced Cooldown. I put it on left click, it's an instant spell, so you can just move around easily without... you put it on your left click and it doesn't impede your movement in any way, and it just every time it's up, the cooldown is off, and you move, it's gonna stay up. So yeah, I'm pretty lazy, so I think for general mapping it's just the easiest way to do it. If you're trying hard on bosses, you might want to bind it somewhere else and try to anticipate when you're gonna get hit or something, because it takes buff can take damage equal to mana spent by the skill's effect, so you get this buff which is gonna absorb some damage. But yeah, for me it's just easier to put it on left click, and it's up most of the time anyway, so yeah, I decided to go for that. And the last thing, well, I got Wrath of course in the Essence Worm. This is just a bunch of damage, and Righteous Fire and Vol Righteous Fire. 39% more spell damage, and then 19% more spell damage, and it's really easy to sustain. You're losing your HP when you're pressing Vol Righteous Fire. It goes down to like pretty low, but it just shoots right back up again thanks to the Agnostic. And I've got a cast on death with Portal. I don't die that much actually, but you will get one shot every now and then. It's just, you know, we don't have a super big HP pool, even though we got 40% mind over matter, you're gonna get one shot every now and then. So it's just, I had 2 slots over and decided to go for it. Again, this is not hardcore, so you're gonna die every now and then. That's just the nature of the game. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video, I think. Let me know if you have any questions about the build, and I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, feel free to subscribe and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.